Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call our committee to order. And I believe we need to do the roll call. Is that correct? So since Carlin is on the phone, I can actually do the roll call. Miss Wanda, is that okay? Thank you. So I'm present, Cynthia Villagomez. Ms. Jane Penn is not here yet. Ms. Linda Dark, I believe, is excused for the day.
Yeah, she has requested an excused absence, Chair Villagomez.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Robert Dura is not with us. I don't believe he's requested an absence.
You're correct.
Excused absence. He did email us, so hopefully he will join us. Mr. William Fulton.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Joycelyn Johnson, I believe, will rejoin us. Mr. Donald Scales has not joined us yet. Ms. Beverly Williams. And I believe we're waiting on her. And then lastly, Ms. Annette Wilson.
Present.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. The approval of the minutes, they were sent to all of us. And so hopefully everyone had a chance to review them. I reviewed them. They looked fine. Don't believe we can vote yet to approve them since we don't have a quorum, but I believe it would be appropriate for us to discuss the minutes. So any thoughts about the minutes? Are there any corrections? Yes, Ms. Wilson.
I didn't have any corrections or additions, but can I just ask a question? Is it okay for those members who are having trouble just to dial in, or do they have to be part of the visual Zoom call?
Well, what we've said is that because it's a public meeting,
right? Okay.
Is always to have the camera on, but of course, if there's a situation where there are some technical difficulties, just for the sake of having a quorum alone, I would recommend that they be allowed to dial in for that reason, that they're having technical difficulties.
I would agree.
All can vote on the business of AAHI. So when Ms. Joycelyn rejoins us, you will have a quorum because Ms. is now on. So as soon as she rejoins, you will have a quorum.
Okay. Yeah, I see. Perfect.
Well, we do have Mr. Hassani Mitchell with us today, and we added him to our agenda items last evening. So as we wait for more of our committee, so we have a quorum, I believe it would be appropriate to move that Mr. Hassani Mitchell could share with us what he wanted to bring to our committee. So do we need to make a motion, or can we simply invite Mr. Mitchell to speak with us?
Well, before we move on, Chair Villagomez, first of all, I know that you are far too humble to do this, but I do want to recognize the fact that this is the first meeting over which you are presiding as chair. And so I do want to congratulate you on that and acknowledge that. so that everyone knows this is your very first meeting as chair. We're coaching you and helping out as much as needed. And I wanted to point out two things to you. Number one, you do now have a quorum, so you can go back and vote on the excused absence requests, and you can vote on the minutes. And number two, we do have Ms. Leanne Denyer on the line with us. She is from WXII News. And so we have two guests. We have Leanne and we have Hassani. And so I just wanted to point that out because I know Leanne cannot stay for the entire meeting. And she was hoping to be able to learn from you all whether or not you are going to be able to interview anyone for oral histories, because she would like to capture some of those interviews, or at least one of those interviews, for a new story that she's working on about the African American Heritage Initiative. So I wanted to just put that out there too, just so everyone is mindful.
Thank you so much, Wanda. And I would just like to add that this is such a huge honor for me. I want to thank the whole committee for voting me during my very first meeting for this position. And I think it would be appropriate to share that because I want you all to know a little bit about who I am. And some of you know me, but this is only the second time that some of you are seeing me and hearing my voice. So I just want to note that 2 years ago at Winston-Salem State, as I was preparing my post-tenure review portfolio, I spent a couple weekends in my office putting my narratives together, really thinking and praying and really getting to know the founder of our institution, Dr. Samuel Green Atkins. And I had a prayer after really being inspired by him that somehow I could serve our community, especially our African American community, the way that he did. And of course, I could never accomplish what he did for us, all those blessings and benefits we still live with. But I feel that this appointment is an answer to that prayer. And I would like all of you to know that for me, this is the greatest honor in my whole sort of academic career. And I am really here for all of us, the whole community, and for the committee. So I will be learning with you and from you, and I'm so excited by this. So I want everybody to always feel free to reach out to me. You have my number, you have my email, and I am here for you. So now that we do have a quorum and we have more members with us, I just want to ask again if well, excuse me, maybe I'm stepping too far forward. I believe we need to approve the unexcused absences. Is that correct, Wanda?
That is correct, yes.
So is there a move to approve our unexcused absences for today's meeting?
I so move.
And is there a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Chair Mia Gomez,
Oh, yes.
Sorry, this is another point I forgot to mention. This is my fault. Because we are doing virtual meetings, we are required by state statute to do roll call voting. And just clarification too with the motion, you all are voting to approve the excused absence requests, right?
Right.
Okay, excused absence requests. So yes, you have to do the roll call vote for each and every motion.
So could Ms. Carlin do that call? Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Chairperson Villa Gomez.
Approve.
Vice Chair Penn will be joining us shortly. Mr. Dara.
Mr. Drew, you're on mute.
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Fulton.
Aye.
Ms. Johnson.
Aye.
Ms. Williams,
I approve.
and Ms. Wilson.
Aye.
So approved. Thank you. So now we'll return to the approval of our minutes. So is there anything that anyone would like to share about the April 2021 minutes?
I move for the approval of our minutes.
I second it.
Thank you. Ms. Carlin, could you?
Chairperson Villa Gomez,
Aye.
Mr. Jara,
Mr. Jura, could you unmute?
he's trying to.
Okay. 17.
Or Mr. Jura, can you at least give us a thumbs up? Okay.
All right, Mr. Fulton,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson,
Aye.
Ms. Williams,
I approve.
and Ms. Wilson.
Aye.
So our April 2021 minutes are approved. So I believe we'll now move to the chair's updates. I would like to just note that I've spent the last few weeks listening to the YouTube videos of previous meetings, and really looking at our website, and then also reading through older minutes. And then luckily, I had the good fortune to have a great conversation with Council Member Scipio, and as well with Ms. Jane Penn. In fact, Ms. Jane Penn and I spoke for 2 hours just this past Monday evening, thinking about our role in the committee and the committee's real mission and vision. So I just want to thank them for how they have helped me to move into this position. And so we thought it would be great to start each meeting after the approval of minutes with a short history, and not from me necessarily, but from any one of us. So I would just like to encourage all of you, if there's a little history that you would like to share, that would be wonderful, because I think that continues to create these types of little histories, create this connection between all of us and between us and our community. So I thought long and hard about maybe, as I was going to start this off, what to say. But it was just really hard to find the right story. So what I thought I would do would be to just read to you something. I made a video about a week and a half ago. The city invited me to come and share for our project a little 3-minute talk on the role of public historians in the context of African American history. So I'm going to read that, and I actually wrote this on behalf of all of us, and it sort of speaks to the inspiration that I take from what we are doing. So I'll read to you, and this will be my vignette for today. So I said, on behalf of the committee, I share our enthusiasm for the fact that now, more than ever, Black urban and public history matters. Historians of urban and public African American history have long shown a special interest in the establishment of Black urban communities. The rich, vivid stories and memories of Black citizens about their lived experiences, beautifully voiced by the people themselves, have built the very foundation of both Black American urban history and the broader field of U.S. urban history. Oral histories are central to the work of public community African American scholars. In the late 1890s, the great Black intellectual and scholar, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois and his wife moved into the city of Philadelphia, becoming members of the Black community there, where he collected oral histories, which he used to write his seminal study, The Philadelphia Negro, one of the first urban historical studies ever published. In the early 20th century, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the Harvard-trained historian, son of freed people, excuse me, I lost my way. So let me return. In the early 20th century, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the Harvard-trained historian, son of freed people, and one of the founding fathers of modern African-American history, taught us the collective strength of individual Black people to speak truth to the present about the past. I would like to share two quotes that ring true for all of us who live in Winston-Salem. My department colleague at Winston-Salem State University, Dr. Russell Smith, and his spatial justice studio colleague, John Rayleigh, wrote last year, "Geography is destiny. Through research, we can inform the debate and shape that destiny, a shared one." Also, similarly, Hannah Love and Jennifer S. Vey have written in their recent article, Making Black History Matter in Public Space, that embedding symbols of history and culture within our public realm have shown to foster pride in one's identity and transmit heritage to younger generations, a critical social function. African American urban history and public historians foster empathy and engage citizenship among all of us in our city, creating collective public memories that celebrate the resilience, tenacity, creativity, and wonders of those who built our history to be what it is today. So that is what I shared. It was a little challenge to stay brief. For history professors, it's hard to do. But I think what I was really trying to capture in that was the sense that, in fact, African American history is American history. And likewise, Black Winston-Salem history is Winston-Salem history. And I think one of the beauties of what we are doing here is to capture the everyday lives of the people in our community who are still alive and all of the heritage that we have received from our ancestors. And this emphasis on everyday life, this is something that I've always worked on as a historian. Not necessarily paying attention to the elite, all the big people, the educated, the wealthy, the political leaders, the church and social leaders and activists, but actually the working class, the everyday people. And I think that is one of the things that makes our initiative stand out. And we must remember that even the American Historical Association now is really stressing that doing history is a social justice act, and in fact, it is a practice of engaged citizenship, as I said, and of empathy. And so that is what I believe we're doing, and that is why I am just so excited to be part of this venture. So, so thank you for letting me share. And again, I would encourage all of you to think about having a little vignette to share at our future meetings. So I believe now the next item on our agenda, and I will try to be a little more brief, is to summarize the best practices in African American oral history. And again, I would just like to emphasize that Dr. Woodson showed us that oral history is really the foundation for African American history. And so when we're looking at public history, we remember that as a community, there's equity and there are no hierarchies. So there's no distinction between scholars like me who have a PhD and everyone else in the public, and we can all be historians. Everyone who is a storyteller is a historian, and I think for those of us who come from African American families, we have inherited the great West African tradition of the griot. And so for centuries and centuries, people have been telling stories. And that is really the foundation of any history, ultimately, are great stories. So I don't want to get long-winded. I just want to share a few of the official practices for oral history interviewing. And I found this, I did my homework, I looked at lots of publications and websites, but we can obviously modify some of the practices as we see fit, and many of you have been doing the histories already. And so I think we are going to have some time today to have some discussion and updates on what subcommittees have done and how we want to move forward. But I thought I would just throw out a few little of these best practices for us to think about as we work together. And this is right from the Oral History Organization's website. So one of the first best practice that is suggested, and I'll just read this, is that the interview should be conducted whenever possible in a quiet location with minimum background noises and possible distractions, unless part of the oral history process includes gathering soundscapes or ambient sounds. Number 2, the interviewer should record a lead-in at the beginning of each session. It should consist of contextual information such as names or, when appropriate, pseudonyms of narrator and interviewer, full date, day, month, year of recording session, location of the interview, being mindful to not list personal residence address, but rather generic narrator's home, and proposed subject of the recording. Number 3, both parties should agree in advance to the appropriate length of each interview session. Given the unpredictability of the setting, however, the interviewer should be flexible and prepared for the session to be cut short, interrupted, or possibly to run long if both parties agree. Number 4, along with asking open-ended questions and actively listening to the answers, interviewers should ask follow-up questions seeking additional clarification, elaboration, and reflection. when asking questions, I don't want to go into all of this right now because I don't want to spend too much time. But that fourth point really speaks to having some flexibility. So it really is this balance of coming into the interview with questions in mind, but also that flexibility to give the person who's being interviewed that freedom to really share. Some other best practices that I've noted say that it's best to not share questions ahead of time with the people you're going to interview, because in fact, if they hear the questions during the interview itself for the first time, their answers, their responses will be more spontaneous. So that's what I have to share about best practices. I know Mr. Flynn, who's my colleague at Winston-Salem State, he and I have worked together a little bit on oral histories for the Union Station, but he really is sort of our expert in town at this point, and I believe that he's already shared with the committee, and we might want to bring him back to help us. So with that being said, I believe that we can move to our next item, which is actually updates from our committees. So I think we want to have a discussion about our subcommittee leadership and membership. And of course, in part, this is practical since Mr. Dura and I are replacing people previously that were the leads on our subcommittees. But maybe this is a time for us to think, and we don't need, Ms. Penn and I thought on Monday that we would want to introduce this idea of possibly regrouping, but of course no one needs to make that decision today. We just would like to open up the discussion. So
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
When you said the responses needed to be spontaneous,
Yes.
Is there an implication there that the more spontaneous, the more accurate the recollection of the history? Is that what that's about?
I'm not really sure. Because in fact, I know when historians and other scholars do oral histories for publication and use the IRB and what's called the CITI certification, which of course it's required so that you can publish research that involves live subjects. You in fact have to have a set of questions that you will ask. So before that federal IRB is approved, your questions have to be approved along with release forms. But in fact, the Oral Historian Association is saying, no, it's best not to. I mean, they also say that there should be the flexibility of having multiple interviews with people. And we all know that sometimes we can get nervous in new situations, like I was very nervous today leading up, had to say a lot of prayers. But sometimes a second or even third interview is appropriate just so that the person who's being interviewed can really relax and think about more of what they want to say. So I did want to just put out what these best practices are, but again, I don't think that we have to feel absolutely obliged to follow these because we can make these work for us and modify them in the way that is, best for our group. And Mr. Dura, you already let us know that you've started interviewing the nuns. So you might want to share with us how that went. That would be a good way to open our discussion.
I'll do that after you tell me that you're going to forward the contents of the things you read today about oral histories.
Definitely, yeah. I'll find out about the logistics of that. I think I probably will need to send that to Miss Wanda and Miss Carlin rather than me sending it directly.
Absolutely.
But everyone has my email, so I really want you all, if you want to just interact with me one-on-one, please call my cell phone and email me. I know Ms. Annette explained sort of the way that we have some rules about even emailing as a committee and meeting, and I think groups of, we're only allowed to meet separately outside of this meeting. Ms. Wanda, correct me if I'm wrong, is it 3 of us can meet at one time? Yeah.
Yes, you just don't want to near having a quorum because then it would constitute a meeting statutorily. So you would avoid that because you all are a public body. You're supposed to meet so that the public can view the meeting and participate if they'd like, which is why we ask you all to turn on your cameras and all of that, if at all possible, when you meet.
And thank you, Wanda. And I would like to say that it would be my hope and really my joy to meet with every subcommittee when they're getting their work started, or at least with members of our subcommittees, just to be there to support you and also to learn from you. And then I also think that I mean, yeah, so I just want you to know that I want to be there if you want me to be there, just to support in however you need support. And then as we're conducting individually, whether it's within our subcommittees or outside of subcommittees, if my time permits, and over the summer, I will have a little more time. But if you want me to go with you and meet you where you're doing the interviews, then please do call on me. But Mr. Dura, I definitely will make sure I send the link. And every month I'll have a little more. I have about 20 pages of notes related to some models of recent African-American public history that I've seen, and some African-American scholars who are doing, their PhDs, but they're doing public history really with their communities and have done some inspiring work. So I'll try to share a little bit every month, but please always.
That would be awesome, Chair Villa-Gomez. I didn't mean to interrupt, but that would be awesome to share, because we'll make sure to get that information out. But in the interest of time, I would recommend that we move on, because we're approaching the 3 o'clock hour. And typically we try to keep the meetings around an hour or a tad over, because marketing has multiple meetings that they have to live stream. And so just try to be mindful of their time.
I'll be brief.
Thank you, Mr. Dura.
Yeah, so the chair is correct. I have already started to speak with people about what their historical recollections are in Winston-Salem, and most notably with right now with St. Benedict the Moore School, which I attended, and St. Anne's Academy, which was the precursor of St. Benedict, which was a girls' school. So I've spoken with one of the nuns who worked at St. Anne's and worked at St. Benedict, and we're going to talk later, and in fact on Thursday, about some of that and how it goes. There's a rich history in the African American community as regards education and the kinds of things that you do in education. So I'm looking forward to having something to share back with the group about how that went, and to begin to standardize a process for what it is we're going to be looking for and how it is we're going to acquire it, and what's the instrument we want to use to actually elicit responses that contribute richly to our understanding of the historical and oral traditions here. So I appreciate being on the committee for that, and look forward to speaking with each and every one of you about what it is you know about the community and how we can actually make inroads there.
Mr. Bobby, did I understand you correctly in that you're planning to do some interviews on Thursday?
We're going to begin. There's some archival work that the nuns have access to about St. Benedict and about St. Anne's, and we're going to start to look at what those archives, what's contained in them, and when things started, et cetera, like that. So not like an official interview, but like what's the information we have access to, and then we can actually begin to structure what's the information we want to collect.
Okay, I was asking because the reporter from WXII was on with us, but she couldn't stay for the whole meeting, which is why I quickly recognized her, because I knew she couldn't stay. But she is really wanting to go ahead and capture one of the AAHI committee members doing something by way of some type of interviews or research, that type of thing. Okay. And so I was thinking, if you're doing this on Thursday, this might be something she would be interested in kind of getting a clip of to include in her overall news story about the AAHI, about the work that you all are doing. And so I think that she'd rather have that sooner than later, because she's been working on this story for a few weeks now.
Can you and I talk off the...
Absolutely.
Offline?
Absolutely.
Then
but I just wanted to...
I don't want it to be a surprise, if you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I understand. I understand. You don't want to show up with news cameras and you're just planning to talk to the nuns in general, and all of a sudden it's like,
Right. And she's 89 years old or something like that. And actually still drives, but I wouldn't want to shock her.
Right. Right. Understood. We wouldn't want that either.
Right. Thanks, Wanda.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Well, is there maybe one or two other committee members who'd like to give updates on what they're doing in their subcommittees?
This is Annette. I'm still trying to identify contact persons within organizations, but I wanted to speak to the subject of the oral interview, since we know that, I know Linda Dark is not present, but since that has been her main focus from the beginning, while she's not on this call, maybe we could, I think it would be appropriate if we ask her if she has an upcoming interview in place, because she's more familiar with that process than I am, because mine, I guess, has been focused on obtaining the written histories for them to upload versus actually going out doing oral histories. And I really feel like she would be a person who could make that happen because she's done them already. In terms of previous experience, and she's worked with the African American Society, and I know she's done a few for this endeavor as well.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Annette. So definitely, hopefully, Ms. Linda can rejoin us for our June meeting. It would be great if we could hear her, what she's been working on. Is there maybe one other person who'd like to share what their subcommittee is doing?
I have a question. This is Beverly Williams. And you mentioned earlier, Cynthia, about regrouping some of the committees. Can you tell me where you were going with that? Because I was assigned communities, and that's a pretty vast assignment for one person. So I'm curious to know where you were going with the regrouping.
Well, it really is about what the committee wants to do. So if, so people can definitely stay where they are. And of course, we can all sort of mix and match. So we could be the lead on one committee, subcommittee, and then helping with others. So Ms. Penn and I really don't want to change things up, but we just want to see if our members, and now that we have Mr. Doerr with us and myself as well, if people would like to change or and also, of course, it's about, as you say, Ms. Beverly, something like communities is really big. And so maybe what Ms. Jane and I can help you to do is to think strategically about ways that your sub-community could move forward. And so we could discuss that outside of these meetings. So we really just wanted people to think about, the possibilities. And if everyone wants to stay where they are, that's great too. And Mr. Doerr and I can kind of move into areas where leadership is needed for the subcommittees. So please, everyone, just think about it and think about what your strengths are and what your interests are. And if you would prefer to move into a different subcommittee, that's great. And so we can talk about that more for our next meeting.
And Chair Villagomez, just for everyone's benefit, I can quickly read off what the subcommittee teams are and who was chairing those teams. We have the churches team, which is chaired by Donald Scales. We have the professionals team, which is chaired by William Fulton. The businesses team, which is vacant right now. The government team, chaired by Joycelyn Johnson. The arts, culture, and entertainment team, which is vacant right now. Oral histories, chaired by Linda Dark. The civic groups team, chaired by Annette Wilson. The education or schools team, chaired by Jane Penn. And the neighborhoods team, chaired by Beverly Williams.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess what I was thinking, each one of these subcommittees have different and a lot of differences, like a number of churches, a number of communities, a number of neighborhoods. What do you all think about focusing in on one committee a month or 2 months and then moving on to another one? And then everybody on the committee could have input so there won't be that cross references. Because once I get into churches, they're going to be a part of a neighborhood. See, and if we can just do neighborhoods with churches or somehow combine them so you won't feel so isolated and alone trying to get your information.
I think that's wonderful, definitely.
Just a thought.
I think it's really important for us to, in a way, streamline and network within our group to support one another. And like you said, to be strategic. And so I think as we move forward through the next few months, we might want to think about a few strategic projects that all the subcommittees can work on together. So I'll be thinking about that this month and hopefully reaching out to you individually to hear your thoughts on that. And we can come back to that discussion for our June meeting. So thank you, Ms. Beverly. I think in the interest of time, we should move on to our fourth item, which is our director's updates from Ms. Wanda.
Thank you. And usually I start off by reporting any new emails that we may have received from the public as far as, the inbox, just general inquiries about AAHI, but we have no new ones to report on. And also, I wanted to discuss the public apology and reparations resolution that was recently passed by the City Council. I don't know if anyone has kept up with that or if you are familiar with the resolution, but I wanted to at least introduce that to you today, just by verbally mentioning it to you and following up with the actual resolution via email so that you can review it in detail. But basically, the City Council did pass that resolution like a week or two ago at a City Council meeting. And in the resolution, there is a reference to the African American Heritage Initiative in terms of helping to advise on reparations. And so reparations and what that'll look like and what that will be is, I think, still a work in progress, but it is something that is going to fall under the AAHI in some shape, form, or fashion. And so really, more than anything, I wanted to give you all a heads up, because I think the logic is that because you all are already studying the history of the African-American community here in Winston-Salem, and a lot of you know it, you know, just is second nature for you, that you would have some thoughts and some very valuable input in terms of what reparations could and should look like, and what you could do to help to kind of guide that process. And so again, it's just something that's very new. It just happened. And so I will forward that resolution to you all. So hopefully by the June meeting, you will have had a chance to really look at it, and then you could pose any questions you may have. And since it just happened, I didn't think it was fair to kind of throw it at you that fast and then say, hey, let's talk about it this month. So I wanted to just kind of slowly let you know that it's coming and then send it to you very soon. Hopefully within the next 24 hours, I can get it to you. So that's what that item was about under director's updates. And so if there are not any questions, that's it for me.
Thank you. I think it's a very powerful moment for us to be living through. And I don't believe there are very many cities in the country, especially in the South, who've passed similar resolutions. And so it's quite timely, and I think we'll all be inspired to know that our work will be supporting that the initiatives of that resolution. So thank you, Wanda.
You're welcome.
So do we have thank you. Do we have city staff updates on marketing and other issues? Okay.
Yes, and I know you mentioned earlier, Chair Villa-Gomez, that we have Hassani Mitchell. So I'm going to try to quickly go through the marketing updates on behalf of Mr. Frank Elliott, who is the Deputy Director of Marketing Communications. Usually he joins us. We do have an internal team that supports AAHI that I've assembled, and they are dynamic. At every meeting, we are joined by those members, and they consist of, as you already know, Tom Flynn from WSSU, and we usually have Ashley Holmes, and we usually have Jackie Haynes from IS, along with Tom Kareska. And we also have Frank Elliott and Takesha Red. And Takesha Red is from the City Attorney's Office. She's the Assistant City Attorney that advises the Human Relations Department and all of our advisory committees, such as yours. And so anyway, just wanted to give that brief little contextual overview for everyone who's wondering who some of these names may be that are appearing on the screen. But on behalf of Frank, he wanted me to mention that, of course, Chair Villa-Gomez, you've already recorded your video about the need and the importance of community historians. And he said that went well, so I just wanted to mention that. He said he's continuing to write scripts for everyone. And this is all about the virtual orientation. Let me back up. He's working on scripting and assisting the AAHI on the virtual orientation, which is supposed to take place for the public next month to coincide with the Juneteenth holiday. So Frank has taken on that task, and we are really grateful to him for that. So he's still working on some scripts for describing the individual collection teams or subcommittees, as we call those. And I think Tom has already sent a script to you, a draft of a script, Tom Flynn, I think. And he said he is working with you on that. Is that correct?
Yeah, he sent me a draft, and I'm just looking through it, and I should be able to get it back to him by the end of the week.
Okay, awesome, awesome. So there are certain people on the AAHI who will be participating and speaking in the virtual orientation. He has asked for volunteers who want to do that. So if you are interested and you've not already done so, please feel free to contact Frank, and he will let you know where he is in this whole process with the scripting for the orientation. Also, he wanted to provide an update to follow up on the discussion back in April with this committee, well, actually the internal committee, about ways to accept information from the public. So we know that, of course, the public will want to probably share information on thumb drives. If they have flash drives or thumb drives, our question was, well, how do we get them? How do we collect that information for members of the public who want to drop it off to have the information vetted and possibly included on AAHI's website? And so Frank did speak with Beverly Witt, who is in the city's revenue department. She's the supervisor, and she has agreed to accept drop-offs of thumb drives at revenue. And so what that would mean is that people could deliver through the drive-through window, the night depository on Church Street, or the drop box in the payment center at the Stewart building, or as some people call it, City Hall South. But there are ways that you could do that, and revenue would get that information to the IS department, or into the Human Relations department, so that we could review it and upload it as appropriate. And so we wanted to just try to make sure there was a convenient and easy way for the public to share any kind of historical information they may have that they could have digitally. Because remember, the overall goal is to have this information available digitally. We don't have the physical space to accept submittals that are tangible, physical, like documents and books or whatever, photographs and so forth. We want all of that information to be submitted digitally. And so by having those on the thumb drive, we figured that would make it a lot easier. And I'm going to ask Ashley and Jackie to jump in, because I'm starting to steer away from my forte. This is not my wheelhouse. When we start getting technical, I am not that person. So I can talk about thumb drives and depositories, but that's as far as I can go. So Jackie and Ashley, can you jump in and kind of share anything that I might be missing on that? Because I know that you were a part of the conversation also.
Yeah, hi, this is Ashley. From a basic point of view, our online submission form can only accept files up to a certain size. And in our internal meeting, we did agree to accept larger files on thumb drives, and it's good to hear that Frank got the drop-off point in revenue. And we've internally discussed and established procedures on what happens after that, including some security checks of the devices on the IS side before we allow those things to be plugged into our network, because of course we have to be mindful from a technology point of view of viruses and things like that. And then after that check is done, to be handed over to Wanda's team in Human Relations for a review. We've also, Jackie on this call, she made the form that is now online into a fillable PDF that will be, I think, put on the site so that it can be filled out and printed, because all of that data about what's on those files will need to be with those thumb drives. All the information that they have to type into the website now will also need, along with their files, as sort of the metadata, as we call it. So we decided all that, and Jackie made that form possible to be filled. And I think that's where we are, Wanda, with that.
I think you're right, Ashley, and I appreciate it. And of course, Ashley Holmes is with the city's IS department, as is Jackie, but we wanted to just make sure that you all understood where we were with doing the collection process for information submitted from the public. And as Ashley said, yes, we will need to have a form, the form to be included with the flash drive so that we know what we're getting. So that's going to be required. And the only thing that revenue is asking is that the form and the flash drive be put in an envelope, and on the outside of the envelope, the person can write AAHI. That's all they have to do. Just write AAHI. So that way they know what to do with it, and they can just route it to IS and/or Human Relations. So we really appreciate the city's revenue department for partnering with us on this and making it as easy as possible for the public to get the information in. And I know that we had one other city update, Chair Villagomez, and that was Hassani Mitchell if Hassani is still with us, and it looks like he is. And so Hassani, did you want to go ahead and speak on what you were thinking about in terms of working with the AHI?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. And thanks, Wanda. Thanks, Chair Villa Gomez. And good afternoon, everybody. I'm Hassani Mitchell, and I work in community development. I'm the project manager for the Choice Neighborhoods Initiative. And if you all are not familiar with the Choice Neighborhoods Initiative, essentially the city of Winston-Salem, along with the Housing Authority, is currently redeveloping the Cleveland Avenue homes, which is the housing development on Cleveland Avenue, and also building a new multifamily apartment complex on the old Brown School Elementary site. But this project, it's focused on redeveloping Cleveland Avenue and also Brown School, but it does incorporate some community improvement projects within that project area. And because this project and because the community is predominantly African-American, I wanted to explore the best ways to capture the history within this community, the best ways to capture specific events that may have contributed to the current status of the neighborhood. And we're talking about a specific section of East Winston and predominantly Northeast Winston, so Liberty Street, 14th Street, Cleveland Avenue, 25th Street. That is really our focus as far as the city of Winston-Salem and some of the neighborhood improvements that we want to make in that area. But a part of the project is getting an understanding of, who were some of the neighborhood figures, the successful businesses, some locations of homes or streets or schools that might have played a historical aspect in making that community essentially what it is. Because as we go through this project, like I said, we're redeveloping the housing unit, but we're also implementing some neighborhood improvements. But we want to tell a story. We want to tell a story of what the neighborhood was, what it is, and where it's going. And just trying to figure out ways and how to incorporate some of the initiatives of this committee, how it might be useful as we go through this project. This is it's a 6-year project, so we're in year 2. So we have 5 more years to do the development, but also do some community improvements. So I wanted to just explore the ways. I know this committee is really getting geared up. So I wanted just to possibly put it on the radar, but also explore some ways. I know you guys are capturing information, capturing history, engaging in individuals. And so as we manage the project, there's a lot of opportunity to really capture the history of the neighborhood as we attempt to transform it into what it will ultimately be. And so I just wanted to bring that to the committee. Once again, my name is Hassani Mitchell. I'm in community development, and I'm the Choice Neighborhoods project manager. So definitely look forward to possibly working with any various committee that comes out of this AAHI and any information that we can possibly share as we attempt to turn around some spots in this particular neighborhood. So thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Hassani. We appreciate that. And Chair Villa-Gomez, I know you all were speaking earlier about the various committees, and I know that Ms. Beverly mentioned that she is the lead currently for neighborhoods. And so, Ms. Beverly, I didn't know if there was anything that you wanted to specifically say right now after hearing what Hassani just mentioned, or if anyone else might want to say anything, because he's concluding the city updates. So that would be the best time if you'd like to jump in and say anything.
Could I ask him to repeat those parameters again? I just heard Cleveland Avenue, 14th Street, 25th Street. Is that kind of forming like the demographics of the area you're identifying at this time?
Well, the Choice Neighborhoods Initiative, it's a fairly large project area, and I'm more than happy to provide the actual project map. The redevelopment of the housing unit is the current Cleveland Avenue homes on Cleveland Avenue. But we want to be able to capture what are some of the historical aspects in the entire project area, which consists of the area 25th Street on the north, Patterson Avenue on the west, Fowle Street, Dunleith, Jackson Avenue on the east, and then all the way down to 3rd Street on the south. So everything that's inside of that area is the Choice Neighborhoods Initiative. So it's a fairly large area, but it's a small area. But I'm more than happy to provide a map of that actual area to provide more context.
Okay, that's great. Well, I will be in touch because that would be one of the neighborhoods that we can definitely explore. And I do have names of people who grew up in that area, and I'm sure they will be able to provide Mr. Mitchell with some definite information regarding the historical, data from that area. Yeah.
And Mr. Mitchell, I'll also reach out to you just on behalf of our whole committee, and maybe we can have a conversation. And also just want to note that because we do service learning at Winston-Salem State, that since your project is long-term, there might be a possibility of having our students be interns and help with your project as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely appreciate that. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. So I believe that we just need to, our last item is meeting reminders for next month. And
so do you, I didn't want to put you on the spot because I didn't give you a heads up with that. Are you okay with that, or do you want me to help, or?
Well, if you do this today, then I'll know what to do next time, hopefully.
No problem at all. So the AAHI meets on the first Wednesday of every month. And so the first Wednesday next month, if I'm not mistaken, is June 2nd. So your next meeting, your next standing meeting will be on June 2nd at 2 o'clock via Zoom, just like today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I don't believe we have any other action items. I believe we've gone through everything. So I believe it's now time to call for the motion to end our meeting. So is there a motion?
Before you do that, I'd just like to thank our chairman because you've done an excellent job with your first meeting, and I sincerely appreciate the energy and expertise that you're bringing to our committee. And now I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Ms. Annette. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Now, do we have to do the call again, one by one? Okay.
Well, Ms. Joycelyn has told us in the past that it's not necessary when you adjourn, but we usually do it anyway. But hey, whatever you all feel like doing. Carlton, do you feel like doing it? We don't have to, apparently, but if you can, if you want to, it's good practice, right?
Okay. I mean, I can.
Okay.
All right. Chairperson Villa-Gomez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Penn.
Vice Chair Penn, you're on mute.
Aye. Mr. Dara.
Aye.
Mr. Fulton.
Aye.
Ms. Johnson. Not sure if she's available. Okay. Ms. Williams?
Aye.
And Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. So our meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.